Hey everybody, welcome back to Just the Sip, Tongasmic Wine Exploration and Adventure with me, your hostess Norma, and co-host
Carlo.
Hey, and we have a special guest today. We have Clyde Galatine, and he is going from Tom Mackey Cellars. He's going to talk us through a little bit of Tom Mackey wine. We only have 10 bottles in front of us. Hello, liver, help me out. And we do have a dump bucket, and just in case. And unfortunately, we're going to talk about the life and partnership and death of Tom Mackey and what that means to the relationship and the partnership with Clyde. So stick around, be right back, and we will talk to you then. Cheers.
Cheers. Happy livers.
Hey, everybody, welcome back. Thanks for tuning in. We have special guest here, Clyde Galatine from Tom Mackey Cellars. And so, Clyde, tell us how you got into the wine business, especially a very small winemaker like Tom Mackey Cellars.
Well, I actually started making wine, I think when I was a freshman in college. My grandfather had, it wasn't French Colombard, Thompson seedless grapes. And so I made some Thompson seedless grape wine, but it was horrible because I made it in a pickle crock.
Oh, gosh.
And so...
Did you have bleed over from the pickles?
It was hard to tell what bled over the worst. It was that bad.
Okay.
But it did sterilize the ground, so I should have sold it to Bayer for a weed killer. But anyway, so I gave up on that. And then my wife and I, we've been into wine our entire lives. We met when I was in my 30s and got married. So we would go out and go wine tasting. She grew up here in Santa Rosa. I grew up in Northern California around Chico and Red Bluff. So when we met, when we lived in the Bay Area, we would drive up to Santa Rosa to stay with her mom, and then we'd go wine tasting. So one day we drove up, and we had our 6-month-old Basset Hound puppy, and he was all lips and ears. And so we went over to St. Francis Winery. They were having a barrel tasting event. So we unload out of the car. We're walking through the parking lot, and in the front of the barrel room were these 6 guys, all sitting there drinking beer and smoking cigars.
Beer in a winery.
It takes a lot of good beer to make good wine. So anyway, we walk up and we're looking for a place to tie our dog up. And the great big guy in the middle of all these guys says, "Tie him up over here. I've had Basset Hounds before." So we kind of looked at each other and said, never argue with the biggest guy in the room. So we tied our dog up. We went into the winery. And we came out about an hour later, and the dog is upside down in the middle of the flower bed, and he's crushed every flower for 10 feet. And all these guys are still sitting there laughing at him, drinking beer and smoking cigars. And my wife goes, "Oh my God, I'll pay for it, I'll pay for it." The big guy says, "Don't worry, I know the owners." And so as we were leaving, I told my wife, I said, "Isn't it great that we have, a dog concierge here at this winery?" And so about 4 months later, we came back to Santa Rosa. There was another event at St. Francis. The dog was even bigger. He was now full grown, about 75 pounds. And we pull up, and here's the same 6 guys sitting in front of the barrel room, drinking beer and smoking cigars. They had never left. They changed clothes, though. And the big guy in the middle says, "Bring Cassidy to me." And Cassidy was the dog's name. And I turned to my wife and I said, "Oh no, he remembers our dog's name. We're in trouble." So
big guy.
So we tie Cassidy up in front of them again, and we go back in, and I said, "Man, this dog concierge stuff is great." And we go into the winery, and my wife says, "Honey, I think the dog concierge is moving up in the world really fast." Because on the walls were all these framed articles. There was an article from the Wine Spectator with our dog concierge picture right in the middle, Tom Mackey, master of Merlot. Wine Spectator special article. And then there was another one from the wine enthusiast, Tom Mackey, great Zinfandels. And my wife says, the dog concierge is doing really good for himself. And it's like, oh no. So from that point on, we knew Tom. And it turns out that Tom was a San Francisco boy, was born in the same hospital as my wife. And he had basset hounds since he was a kid, just like my wife had. So we bonded really over the dogs because he had a basset hound at home also. And we had, at that time, we only had one. Within about a year and a half, we wound up with about 4.
Oh, gosh.
Because my wife used to raise and show bassets all through the 80s. Mm-hmm. And so that's how we met Tom. And so he would have us call him when we were coming up. He and his daughter would come over to the winery and meet us. His daughter, Lauren, would walk Cassidy out around in the vineyard. And then we'd go in and get to taste anything we wanted, in essence. Wow. And that's how it started.
Wow.
So then we moved up here in 2000 and became even closer friends. So we were, we'd go to their house for dinners, and they'd come to our house, and the whole basset hound thing, and plus a little bit of wine.
Did all the dogs get together?
Oh yeah.
They played just well.
As a rule, they did. Yeah. Yeah.
That's a rule.
Yeah. Well, there's always the pecking order.
Yes, true. Yeah. There's an alpha.
Yeah, and the alpha's at their house. That they're alpha prime. Yep. So you have to toe the line, so to speak.
Yeah. Okay, since we have 10 wines, let's start talking about the first one. I think we've got Zinfandel here. So give us just a brief overview on this and what makes this so special. It's delicious, by the way. Tongasmic, I would say. I am a big fan of the Zins myself, so very biased.
That sounds much better than Clyde Galatine.
It is.
Bad ring.
Wow, that is better.
So anyway, this is a 21 Zinfandel from Sonoma Valley, and the majority of it is Monticello Zinfandel, which is an old vineyard that Tom had been buying fruit from for St. Francis way before we ever started getting it. It's mountain fruit. This fruit probably came from about, I'm guessing, an average of about 1,700 foot elevation up above the town of Kenwood to the east, almost all the way to over the top into Napa, but not quite.
Okay.
And then what we do is we blend everything. We don't go 100% as a rule, because what we discovered was if you have other wines that you can blend in, it's like having paint on a palette. The more colors on your palette, the more colors you can paint on your picture. And that's exactly what this is. In 2015, it was a really bad short harvest for Zinfandel and Cabernet. So we went out looking for blenders. Okay. So that's when we found Len Woolard's Malbec and Merlot and Cabernet. Okay. And then Stemic Family's Petit Verdot. And so this wine has 8% Petit Verdot, 5% Malbec, and 5% Cabernet. So it's still considered a Zinfandel, but it has these slight amounts of Bordeaux varietals in it. Sure. And it gives it more body, a little more texture, it can smooth off the rough edges. Some people don't like Zinfandel because it's really peppery. But this wine, as a rule, isn't that peppery anyway. But with these blenders, it's much mellower. Right. It's more the velvet fist.
Yeah, great. Awesome. And, okay, so I see retail price of $40. Anyone who's watching, assuming you have any left.
We still do.
How do they get it? Do you guys have a website?
Yes.
Yeah, right.
TomMackeyCellars.com.
Okay.
It's most of the information there is archaic because we haven't changed it in about 5 or 6 years. Okay. But the wines that are offered there are up to date.
Okay, that's important. That's important. Okay, so we're going to do a side-by-side. It hurts me to say this, but I'm going to dump this and move on to the side-by-side. I think that's wonderful. But because we have 10 that we're going to go through, I think I'm just going to move on a little bit. And while we're doing that, so tell us, continue on the story with Tom. So Tom, Eventually left St. Francis, correct?
Right. So Tom's story was he actually started out to be a teacher. Oops, sorry about that. And he had been working in liquor stores in San Francisco while he was still there in high school and in college. And I think he taught a couple of classes and realized that, yeah, he loved it, but it wasn't for him. And so he got into winemaking. So he went to school at Fresno State, got his bachelor's and his master's degree there for vinology, and then wound up over in, I believe, at Gold Seal in New York State. Was, I think, his first stop. I think he was one season spent at a smaller winery over in Napa County.
Okay.
But he moved to New York for a couple of years, got to experience the fun winters there, the change in seasons for sure, and then decided that he had cut his teeth. He was ready to come back to California. So I believe he worked at one or two other places just briefly, and then at that time, 1983, St. Francis was looking for their first winemaker. They had been making wine for probably, I want to say they would have been open for 5 years or 4 years, but they always were having traveling winemakers make their wine. There was no continuity in what they were doing. So Tom was hired to be their first winemaker. So at that time, in 83, they were making, I think, 10,000 cases a year. By the time Tom retired in 2012, they were up to 500,000 cases a year.
Wow.
The three gentleman families that owned it had sold out to a larger corporation, and they had gone big. They went from the little place where Cassidy crushed the flowers up to this big facility, which is where they're at now, outside of Kenwood, between Kenwood and Santa Rosa. He made some great wines, got great accolades, but his hands weren't purple anymore. He missed actually getting to make the wine because he had become corporate. So
administration.
Yes, he was doing admin, and he didn't like it. He had trained numerous winemakers. In fact, I think he trained 4 different female winemakers who have all moved on to much, much bigger and better things.
Fantastic.
He was one of the first. And so...
First to train females?
Well, I don't know about first, but he, for whatever reason, he seemed to have a lot of female winemakers. They just came there. And some of them worked their way up. Some of them were the daughters of employees.
Okay.
Katie Madigan, the head, one of the 2 head winemakers there now. That's how she started.
Wow.
So anyway, so in 2012, he said, nope, I'm quitting. So he retired after 30 years there. And so the summer of 2012, we started making wine in his backyard. And so in 2012, we made, I think we pressed about 1 to 1.5 tons of fruit.
Oh my God.
Zinfandel, Cabernet, and Petit Syrah.
Wow.
And so we had all of that in a building that we had added an air conditioning, a cooling unit, and super insulated it. So that was where all the wine got stored.
Right.
And we enjoyed it. And so Tom and I said, well, I told Tom, I said, I want to help you make a world-class wine. I want you to have your name on a bottle. And he says, yeah, I wanted to do that too. And our wives were foolish enough to allow us to go commercial. So we started in around 2013.
Okay, I'm gonna stop you there. To be continued. Let's talk about this wine. Is definitely different than the 21.
Yes, this is the 22. The blend is a little different. It has 85% of the Monticello's in, 10% of the Petit Verdot, 3 of the Merlot, and 2 of the Monticello Cabernet. So there's a little bit more Petit Verdot in it. And a little bit less Cabernet. So it gives it, the Petit Verdot, we loved it because it gives a lot of real power to our wines.
Yeah, and I just, for me, I feel like the Zin really comes out then too, because it's not, you don't have that competing cab taste with it. Just a touch of it, but not overpowering. So personally, I like this one better, but they're both very good. What do you think, Carlo?
I noticed that it was had a bit more of a softer feel. I don't want to say sweeter, but I kind of noticed the hints of it.
Yeah, all of our wines are absolutely fermented to dry. So if you taste sweet, it's fruit. That's the fruit flavor. And we have to remember too that all of these 2022s that we're pouring here have only been in the bottle for about 7 weeks, 8 weeks. So they're really new. They're not bottle shocked, but they're still maturing.
Yeah.
So that's a good question. Say I was going to buy the 21 or 22. How long would you keep it in your cellar before you think it's pretty close to mature? About 5, 6 years?
Yeah, I have a tendency to overage things. I'm a rat holer. I'll put things in the back and
try to forget about it?
Well, yeah, because generally I bury it with more wine. So
Sure.
the trick is finding it. But I don't mind. I like older wines, but what we will do is we want to open a younger wine, we'll carafe it.
Yeah.
We'll either carafe it, or a really fast way to do it without a carafe is you pull the cork out, you let the bottle air a little bit, maybe pour a little bit of wine out in a glass, preparing dinner.
Of course.
And then put the cork back in and shake it up a little bit. Not agitate it, but just swish it back and forth.
Get that
and
oxygen in there.
that gives it a little super oxygenation, a little quicker. And then as long as you want to let it go, I mean, we will continue to taste as we're cooking it, especially if it's a long, if we're going to cook an hour or 2 hours before we eat, we'll savor a little bit of it and see where it's going.
Yeah.
Sometimes they make it to dinner, sometimes they don't.
That's when you have to open 2 bottles. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing here because we're moving on to number 8. 8 of 10. Sorry, I couldn't move that.
That's okay. That's all right. I'm stretching into the camera. So
you're welcome to chug too if you want.
I've contemplated it.
Well, it's not a bad contemplation. That's verified, right?
There are worse things to contemplate.
Yeah, true. Sound.
Yeah.
The sweet sound of new wine in my big glass.
And these nice large wine glasses help to aerate and warm the wine.
And so that, before we got on film, you were telling us about warming it a little bit and cupping it. Will you tell the audience what you mean by that?
Sure. So these wines just came out of the cellar, so they're stored at about 60 degrees. It's been a warm day today, so I rushed them out of the cellar into my truck and drove here so that they don't get hot, because heat will injure a wine, whether or not you're drinking it immediately or you're going to age it in a cellar somewhere. So if it's cold, what we've always done is, having this big of a glass is great, because this is what we call the fishbowl. So you can really give it air, and you can aerate it quickly, and then you grab it by the base and swirl, and that will warm it up a little bit more too. If you feel it's cold or you want to warm it, that's a quick way to do it.
Okay, and that's going to open up the wine just a little bit quicker for you.
And you will smell this wine.
It's distinct.
Yes.
I like it.
And so so this is the Dog Tired Red. And the story behind this is in 2012, we used a small hand-driven press to press this 1.5 tons or so of grapes. Mm-hmm. And it was a warm day. We're out behind the house, and it's one of those ones where you crank. And by the time we got done pressing everything, we were beat. We're tired. And all of our basset hounds are laying around the lawn and the gravel near us, just watching us and thinking, humans are so stupid. So we got to the point where we had filled the barrels we had, but we had 20 gallons of Zinfandel, 20 gallons of Cabernet, and 20 gallons of Petit Syrah left over, and we had no smaller containers, but we had one big 60-gallon barrel. So we were so dog tired that we just threw it all in there together because we just didn't have the energy to go try to find containers. So it became Dog Tired Red. And so after about a month, we started tasting out of the barrel, and we're kind of going, hey, this ain't bad. And it only got better. And so pretty soon the neighbors are coming over. So
Wow.
we always remembered that. So when in 2015, when we had the blenders, at the end, we had a little bit of some left over. And so we made the first commercial Dog Tired Red in 2015. But this one, so this is from Bastonia Vineyard, which is out on Reedley Road. I can't remember the clone, the Zinfandel clone, but it's from an old famous ranch up in Mendocino County. Russ will have to forgive me for not remembering. And so this is more like Valley Zinfandel, and then it has 20% of the Mountain Cabernet, the Monticello Cabernet, and 20% of the Malbec. So this is really, as I describe it, this is a Zinfandel for Bordeaux drinkers.
Mm.
Or somebody who doesn't like Zin but likes a Bordeaux or a Cab, this is more approachable to them. It again, the roughness of the Cabernet of the Zinfandel is polished off, and you get the nuances of a Bordeaux.
I love it. I love this.
It has a big nose.
It has a great nose, but it also has it's great flavor. I mean, and like you said, I think it's really smooth. Yeah.
Most distinctive one that I've smelled so
Yes,
far.
Yeah.
it will be because of its not odd character, but its odd blend.
Mm-hmm.
When we did this, we took this to a Zinfandel tasting event where there were like 200 Zinfandel wineries pouring, and we were the only one. There was one other winery that was also making a Zinfandel that had Malbec in it, but they were from a different locale and completely different style of wine than ours. Theirs was big and brambly. Ours was smoother because they were from the Sierra foothills, and that's just what the style was.
Sure.
So everybody thought, hey, this isn't bad. I never stopped.
All right, everybody. Hey, we are on to the Merlot. And as we're tasting the 2001 Tom Mackey Merlot, so let's continue the story of your partnership with Tom Mackey from your backyard.
So we started in the backyard, and then we went looking around someplace in the area around Santa Rosa where we could make our wine, but we wanted someplace where we could rent equipment and rent space, but do all the winemaking chores ourselves.
Okay.
And be 100% our wine, just with possibly somebody else's distemmers and tanks and things like that.
Is that common?
Yes.
Okay.
There are dozens and dozens of wineries that do not own any equipment other than maybe their barrels and their bottles,
Okay.
simply because you don't need to.
And the cost associated.
Right. But you don't wind up with this large initial outlay for distemmers and elevators and presses and all of that stuff. You get the best of both worlds. Now, with white wine, you need chillers. We never made a white wine because where we are, they don't have enough white wine chillers for space for us. So we just chose not to ever make a white wine. I mean, I wanted to. We wanted to make a Sauv Blanc, but we just never got around to it.
Sorry, I interrupted you. So you're looking for shared space, and you found one.
Yes. So Inspiration Vineyards. If any of you have ever heard of a beer called Death and Taxes, it's a very, very big, dark beer. The brewery is right across the driveway from us.
Okay.
So, and Carol Shelton Winery is right down the road from us also, and some other small wineries. So it's a tilt-up buildings, concrete buildings, and there's probably 8 to 10 different wineries in different buildings. And then where we make ours at Inspiration, I think there's at least 10 to 12 little wineries making their wine there too.
Wow.
Anywhere from Inspiration's staff makes it for them. all the way to us, which is all we do is use their equipment,
Okay.
and we do the rest.
So there's a spectrum of use.
Yes, yeah, it's completely across the board, and then it's a choice of what kind of fruit you're bringing in, what varietal. Right now, there's still all sorts of different fruit coming in, from Pinot Noir through Zinfandel, up in the Cabernets, and the bigger reds are starting to come in because it's been so hot.
Yeah, I bet. Oh, this is wonderful. What do you think, my Merlot man?
Very good.
Yeah.
Best Merlot I've had so far.
Well, Tom,
What? Can't hear you.
Oh, best Merlot I've had so far. I can't wait till year 2.
it's the first one.
Yeah.
But Tom was named the Master Merlot by the Wine Spectator in 1995.
Wow.
And he was one of the early big, I should say, big names in making Merlot. Duckhorn, St. Francis. There were a couple others that are escaping me right now. But St. Francis, definitely for Sonoma Valley, was on the cutting edge of making Merlot. They always were.
Yeah.
And Tom loved making it. That was probably what he was best known for, was his Merlot.
Yeah, it's fabulous. Absolutely fabulous.
Yeah, so this Merlot, this one has a lot more of the Bordeaux blenders in it, the Cabernet, Malbec, and Petit Verdot. Unfortunately, this fruit got picked a little too early. It wasn't quite as ripe as what we had liked, but we weren't in control of the picking.
Okay.
So we knew when we saw how much sugar was in the juice that we were going to have to build it up a little bit. So that's what we did with this wine. So I'd like to think it came out nicely. It wasn't exactly what we had intended, but you take what you get and you work with it.
Yeah, so that's a question that I have. So working with the grape growers is a pretty close relationship that you have then, and I would assume that Tom had a close relationship with Len Woolard previously from his time at St. Francis.
Right. He had bought fruit from Len before.
Right.
In fact, this Merlot, I want to say not long after Len planted this Merlot was going into the Chateau Saint Jean Cinq Cépages, which was the #1 wine in the Wine Spectator a couple of times. The Merlot that was in that wine was from this vineyard. So it's got a good pedigree.
Yeah, sure does. All right, should we start with the 22 then? I hate to dump this because it's so good. I hate to dump any of it, truly.
And you really do need enough in your glass to where you get the taste and the aroma. It's,
Yeah, you can't just put an eyedropper in there.
No,
Right.
no. All it does is leave a flavor.
And so this is 22 is going to be the last vintage that
Correct.
Tom Mackey Cellars has.
That's correct.
Because Tom passed away just as today's filming, well, maybe 2 months ago now?
July
about
29th.
July
yes.
29th.
It was sudden, unexpected. His health hadn't been the greatest for a long time, and he was a very big man, and he had gastric bypass, but gained some weight back. So he was an ex-football player in high school, and he loved to get into the wine cellar and show how strong he was compared to the other guys. That's always the game you play.
Yeah.
So
maybe for men it is.
Well, yeah. As a rule, he probably could lift more than anybody else in the winery.
Very vivacious. I never had the chance to meet him.
Yeah, unless you had a forklift in your back pocket.
Okay. All right. Wow.
Okay, Carlos. So, what do you think of that?
Very good. I can kind of feel it. It's kind of I would say I don't want to say peppery because I don't know the exact definitions, but there's something that it's kind of a little bite to the back of the tongue.
And that's
people like.
Yeah, and that's, again, this wine has only been bottled for 10 weeks, but this has 95% Merlot in it. We picked it when we wanted it, so this is a more true expression of Merlot. But it's a pup, but it has just a couple of percent Malbec, Petit Verdot, and Cabernet, just enough to give it a little more body, But again, probably within 6 months to a year, it's going to open up and integrate even more, I would expect.
Yeah, this one is definitely something I would put in my cellar, but it's wonderful now. I mean, definitely. But I can't wait for it to mature, right? And try it later on after it matures a little bit. But 95% of blends Merlot says a lot for the grape.
Yes, yeah. And again, we actually this harvest, I was out there at midnight with the crew and Len and another gentleman who helped us out, and we picked for 6 hours. But we got it dead perfect as far
Just
as
when
we were
you wanted
concerned.
it,
Yeah, we got it at the right brick level that we wanted. So that's after that, and it's all up to the winemaking.
Yeah. Or the spice rack, as
Yes.
it's been called. I love that.
Because we barrel age everything for about 21 months, but we don't blend any of it until just before we bottle. We go through blending trials to decide what we want to do, and then we blend it, and then
you don't just blend all these big batches. You take little by little.
Right. Well, and you don't know what you're going to get because, again, you've got different barrels. So we do not over oak our wine too heavily. We normally run up between 25 and 30% new French oak, medium toasted. So it's not huge. It's more subtle. It still has oak nuances, but the wine can still speak for itself.
Right.
The oak doesn't overwhelm it. And then the other 75%, 75% is anywhere from 2-year-old to inert 4-year-old plus French oak. It's all still French oak barrels, but only about 25 to 30% new.
Okay.
And it's bloody expensive, about $1,000 a barrel.
Yeah. Including shipping?
No, that's generally about. There's so many places that sell barrels here now that's just built into them.
Built in the cost.
Some places actually, they ship the staves here and then build the barrels here. And other companies actually build the barrels and then put them in containers and ship them here. So it's just different companies do it different ways. So this is the 21 Malbec. So Malbec is one of those ones where everybody thinks of South America. And you tell me, what do you think?
Smooth. I like that one.
Yeah. I think it's got a lot of character to it. I'm a Malbec fan. And I think this is really, like you said, it has a nice mouthfeel to it for sure. But the flavor is wonderful as a Malbec. And there's very few American Malbecs. I say that I like. So this is up there.
And this is the first one we made. We had, from 2015 through 2020 or 2019, we always blended in the Malbec. But we decided, we actually made for 1 year, we made a Petit Verdot because were able to get enough fruit to do it. But that was a rarity for that vineyard. So the Malbec, we decided to plug into its place in 21, and a little not inside baseball here, but we just received a 91 rating from the Wine Enthusiast. It's going to be in their December 2024 edition. And what's interesting is that they recommend that you decant it for an hour and then enjoy it with a ribeye. When we first bottled this wine a year ago, the first time my wife and I sat down with a bottle of this wine, I seared a ribeye and melted blue cheese dressing on top of it, and then had it with twice baked potatoes and wedge salad. Wow. And we were in food wine coma heaven. and it's funny that the Enthusiast picked up that same idea for pairing. I was happy.
Yeah, this is a nice big red for sure. Yeah. Wow.
But it does work well. When I was pouring at the Tiburon Wine and Food Festival last Saturday, the booth next to me was serving hamburgers. So we were so close. So we had people eating their hamburger, coming around to our table, and I had 7 different red wines there. And I told the people, asked, what should I have? And I poured them the Malbec.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Wonderful. So how do you move forward from this, from the death of a partner in a winemaking business? This is a hard question. And if it's,
Gingerly.
yeah, if it's too difficult, just tell me.
No, it's because I handled all of the marketing and a lot of the physical work because Tom's health was on the decline the last couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, before he died, he was supposed to have back surgery to fuse a couple of vertebrae, because so he was having a problem walking and standing. So when we go to tasting events, I always made sure we had a nice chair for him to sit in so he could be comfortable.
Sure.
And then we'd have people come around the table and talk to him in person if they wanted to chat.
Or ask questions or whatever.
Yes.
Sure.
So this is the 22 Malbec. And it's similar to the 21. They're almost identical blends.
Wow.
With 92% Malbec, 5 Cabernet, and about 3% Petit Verdot.
Mm-hmm.
But again, different years, different
climates.
wine, different wine,
Totally
different pick.
And there's still a little bit of fruitiness to this. You can tell the 21 was a little bit more mature, having this side by side. But I want to put this in my cellar and keep it there for another 5-6 years.
Yeah, there's a little bit of cherry and raspberry hiding in the back that's going to come out as time goes on. It's just kind of lurking back there now. It's a little awkward right now.
Well, and at 14.3%, it's a little lower alcohol, which is nice too. You're not getting that overbearing flavor of that alcohol.
Yeah, none of our wines, we try to keep our alcohols down. Again, when you get fruit that's too sweet, when when you ferment, it goes from sugar to alcohol. So you want to have a specific point where you want to pick at where you hit that sweet spot. And for us, all these wines are right around 14.3 to 14.9, if my memory serves correct, except for the Zinfandel.
Yeah, the Zins are up to 15.
Yeah, and that's not unusual. 15.9 for a Zinfandel is not odd at all.
Agreed.
That's middle of the road, actually.
Mm-hmm.
So far, what I really enjoy about the Malbecs is they're not really too much in your face as far as having a certain distinctive flavor. It's quite blended quite well.
And that's the key. That's where we did, once we turned the corner on 2015 and had all these blenders, that's where I think we really our wine started to blossom, because we had the ability to blend for just something that doesn't knock your socks off. We wanted to just subtly overwhelm you. Wake up the next morning with a smile on your face.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so we're on to the Serious Red.
Yeah, so tell me, Clyde, I was wondering about the name of it. Are you a big fan of Sirius Satellite Radio, or?
No, I'm pretty terrestrial, actually. But if you're making grapes, you better be terrestrial. Or making wine. So no, we again, I don't know. It's probably the camera's not close enough, but the Dog Tired Red has a specific label on it with a basset hound sleeping. And so that was our homage to our basset hounds. And then when we started making the Serious Red wine, we discovered that word serious was available to name a wine after. There had been another winery that had used it in the past for, I believe it was a Petit Syrah, but they had let it go. They had not made it in 5 or 6 years, so we picked it up and called it Serious Red Wine. And of course, Serious is the dog star. So this is our semi-serious, serious blend.
So seriously, do you have to call the winery that had it before and let them know you're thinking about naming it? Or at 5 years is about convention if somebody doesn't use it?
Yeah, because it's more or less kind of like nobody's used it. You can apply for it and get it.
Okay.
And that's what we did.
Apply where?
I can't remember if it was TTB, tobacco and firearms,
Oh, okay.
but it was one of the
The people that
alphabet.
regulate.
It was one of the alphabet soup federal agency.
So every label has to be approved
Correct.
through that agency.
Yes. They all have to be approved, and practically every year. And now with California having the CRV tax, the 10 cents a bottle, we also, as of this year, we have to add the little CRV stamp on the back
Right.
for wine sales in California. And since most wineries, unless they know specifically that wine is not going to be sold in California, they're going to put every bottle of wine they've got is going to have that little stamp.
Sure.
So that just started. And so that's just another layer of fun bureaucracy that we're dealing with at $10 or 10 cents a bottle.
Oh, right. Yeah. Yeah. So again, I got, you said you're moving forward delicately after Tom's death. So tell me what that means.
So again, I was handling the marketing. I was handling, doing a lot of the physical heavy lifting, that kind of thing. Tom was handling the business along with his wife. So right now I'm trying to transition into handling a lot more of that.
Okay.
So that's the hard part, is kind of like suddenly, boom. Fortunately, I just retired.
Yes. Congratulations.
2 weeks after Tom passed away, I retired. So luckily I've had time to spend on trying to pick all this up. Hasn't been easy, it hasn't been fun, but it has to be done.
Right, and as part of the estate, I would assume that you have to, no pun intended, liquefy the assets.
Correct, yeah, we're going to,
Which includes,
everything changes because the ownership now the paperwork has to change.
right.
So we're in the middle of that.
Now, do you become sole owner, or is this the last time we're going to see Tom Mackey Cellars?
The
name has got to go too, right?
Right. The 2022, we had decided in 2023 not to make any more wine. The 2022 was going to be our last harvest. And there were several reasons. One was Tom's health. I don't have the money to buy out the winery entirely.
Okay.
And plus with COVID, it hurt us very badly financially.
Yeah.
So we just didn't have the money. There's a huge initial outlay of cash. When you're making quality red wine, the wine from the time you pick the fruit to when you can finally start selling the wine in bottles is 2 years minimum.
You're right, yes.
So you have to be able to absorb that blow, then the next year's blow also.
That's right.
And then the third year, you're buying it just about the time you're finally going to be able to sell the first year.
Right.
So, and plus in 2020, because of all the fires here, we lost all of our wines. It was all smoke tainted. So we didn't make a wine in 2020. So we didn't have that in the pipeline for cash flow when 2023 came around.
Wow.
So it all conspired to make the solution easy. We're just going to stop here.
Okay.
And so in a way, it was fortuitous that it happened that way.
So there was never a plan for 23.
No. Well, in 23, there was a plan, and then it was like, no, we're not going to.
Right. We're phasing out.
Yes,
Right.
exactly. So what is here is the last of the Tom Mackey Cellars wines. The 22s are the finale.
Wow. Okay, well, I am on the cab. Do you want me to?
Well, I'm still enjoying my series.
I know. Well, we're going to start this. But you want to talk about it a little bit?
Well, yeah, just to mention what it is. So this is a true Bordeaux blend. This wine has about 65% Cabernet from mountain and valley.
That's a series.
Cabernet, yes,
Yeah,
the
right.
series. But it also has a fair amount of Malbec, Merlot, and Petit Verdot. So it's about 2/3 Cabernets and 1/3 Bordeaux blends.
Mm-hmm.
So the break point is you have to have at least 75% of a certain varietal to be able to call it that name on the label.
Right.
So this, we knew we would have to call it a different kind of name. So hence we picked the word series.
Right.
just like the Dog Tired Red, because there was less than 75% Zin, it became its own special name.
Nice.
That, and it's seriously good.
And it is seriously good.
We try, yes.
Got it. Seriously.
Serious.
So if people want Tom Mackey wines, they better get their rears and gears and order it, basically, because the stock is limited. I mean, you guys are a small producer anyway.
Right. I think we made 350 cases in 2022,
Wow.
and we've got small amounts of the 2021s left and the 2019 cab, which is what we're moving into right
Yeah,
now.
we are. Yes.
What a segue.
Yeah. Wonderful.
So this is the 2019 Cabernet, and again, this is from the Monticello Vineyard, which is the mountain vineyard up above the town of Kenwood.
Okay.
Not quite in Napa, but close. The crow flies there very easily. This wine, I mean, we've had it for a while, but we didn't release it until just recently because we had a lot of 2018 Cabernet to sell,
Oh.
and we finally have sold all that out. So we've been entering this wine in competitions, but we never really sold it. We didn't try to sell it because we wanted to run out of the 18, which we're within a couple of cases of right now. But this wine, for those of you that care about medals, this wine has won the equivalent of 6 gold medals or higher at 6 different competitions or local periodicals.
And that says a lot. I mean, you can just say, okay, I won a gold medal, but that really does mean something, especially competing in this area with some of the top dogs.
Right.
On the dog thing.
Yeah, the Sonoma County Harvest Fair is next weekend, and both the 19 and the 21 Cabernet received double golds, which means that the 3 judges that tasted it all agreed it was gold level wine.
Wow.
And then also the 22 Zinfandel received a gold medal. So we did well in that competition, and that's one of the it's one of the smaller high-end competitions for California. Orange County Fair is a big one. The San Francisco Chronicle might be the biggest of all.
Right.
Sunset Magazine is a very good one. California State Fair is another one. North Coast Wine Competition is another one for just this region. It's a big one also. So we more or less kind of focus on local, good, big, competitive competitions.
Right. So we can tell you this is good, but the experts are also telling you this is phenomenal wine.
And also, we've been in the last year we sent 5 wines to the wine enthusiast, and of those 5, 4 of them were rated at least 90 points to 93 points.
Right. And the max is at 100, right?
Yes.
Right. Okay.
But I don't know if there is a perfect 100-point wine, because that means that all the angels in heaven are dancing on your tongue at the same time. And I don't know if that's going to happen.
I'd love for that to happen. That'd be tongue-gasmic for sure.
Do you have any tips on how to, for like beginning winemakers on how to create something that's palatable to a lot of people?
Just know what you like. I mean, if you like it and you can find some good fruit, experiment with it. Unfortunately, this year in Northern California, there's so much fruit that is gone unbought. There are places that are giving away fruit if you go into the vineyard and take it. And there's going to be tough. There's going to be probably some facilities, not wineries per se, but definitely some vineyard owners that are going to be hard pressed because they're not going to have any money for all this fruit for this year. I know of several, at least, just from where I make my wine. 15 tons of Chardonnay that has no home. 20 tons, 30 tons of Merlot and Cabernet that has no home. It's good fruit. It's just nobody's out there to buy it. And that's tough. So,
And there's a whole other story as
Yeah.
to the why behind that.
Yeah,
We're not
I mean,
going to get into.
a lot of people call it
it.
market correction.
Mm.
It's a nice way to put it.
Mm. Yeah.
So on to the last, the 21 Cabernet. So what'd you think of the 19?
Love it. It is so wonderful. Again, like it's still a little early for me, a little fresh, but it still has really nice. You can see how it's maturing really great.
Yes, and Cabernet, I mean, for better or for worse, I haven't tried any of our, actually, let me have that. I'm going to rinse that schmutz out of there. A little bit on the side of the,
Oh,
that's,
you got a little sediment.
the angel's tears got solid. Where was I at? I segued out of my mind there for a second. It's just, again, it's aging, it's still young, but if you want to enjoy it, you can always carafe it
Yeah.
and give it a little air and
Shake it up, as you say.
yeah, if that's what you want to do. If you don't have another container to pour it into,
Mm-hmm.
you don't need it. But it's just what you're willing to try. It's like making it. You've got to be willing to do it. When in 2015, when we had all these blending grapes, we were fooling around and we threw a little bit of Malbec into the Zinfandel just for grins and giggles.
Mm-hmm.
And Tom had never done that before at St. Francis because that just wasn't a standard
That would
blend.
do.
Yeah. And we did it and we kind of looked at each other and we go, that ain't bad.
Mm.
And we have a group of friends that are all, as we call them, part of the Alcoholics Unanimous group. And they would come over and they would taste our blends we had blending trials.
Mm-hmm.
And the Zinfandel that had the Malbec always scored better.
Wow.
And so it's like, no, we've got to go with this. But that was just, again, we just, out of the blue, we said, let's pour some of that in there. Let's see what it does. And it worked. It may not work for everybody, but the Zinfandel and that Malbec pairs well together. It's very symbiotic.
Wow. Okay, so what do you think about the 21 compared to the 19?
I love it. There's no way to describe what I'm tasting, but what I'm tasting is quite good.
A lot of fruit.
Fruit, yeah. And it's kind of got that nice little
Tannins.
tannins, yeah. Kind of that feeling that touches the back of your tongue, which I do like,
Mm-hmm.
And in Cabernet, you should, it's good to have that.
Yeah.
Really, that's standard. So really the only difference between the 19 and the 21 is just a couple of % off for all the different blenders.
Mm-hmm.
But again, the 21 is 2 years newer. We just released it. We got a 96-point score from Sunset Magazine for this last year, but we hadn't sold any of it. So this is really the coming out party for it. We decided, because we had so much 19 cab and 21 cab, that we would not make a 22 cab. We just thought, no, we don't need to. And so we used it as a blender for all of these wines, and it worked great.
Yeah.
So no downside, no issues that we had with it. It just worked out fine.
So my final question for you, since we're on the final bottle here, Clyde, what's next for you in retirement? Since you won't be, I guess, necessarily making wine with Tom Mackey, obviously, after you liquidate all your assets, what's up for you?
A new pickup?
Okay, fair enough.
Hopefully, a newer pickup.
Okay.
Yeah. But the folks that run Inspiration Vineyards, I love going over there and playing with them. I'll be over there, just getting my hands dirty.
Okay.
Len Woolard, who has the Merlot and the Malbec and some of the Cabernet, we've become friends over the years now. So I have no doubt that if he needs somebody out there driving a tractor or picking fruit, I don't mind getting up at midnight.
Yeah.
give me enough to eat and drink, and I'll be there.
Perfect.
And, you know, I've got other things to do too. I've got plenty of things around the house that need to be done.
And that's a non-stop project.
Yeah, well, we've been in our house now for 25 years. We've fully remodeled it once already, and now the remodels are getting a little dated. So now they have to be fixed, cleaned up a little bit. So that's the next stage of retirement, is do what I can and then hire somebody to help me do the rest.
Yeah, sure.
But no, I'll be keeping my hands purple.
Okay.
Somewhere, somehow.
All right. When's the next tasting that's scheduled?
Saturday.
Next Saturday. Okay.
This Saturday, let's see, what day is that? The 12th, I believe. Yeah, the 12th. The grand pouring and tasting for the Sonoma County Harvest Fair is the evening, Saturday evening. And this year they've decided to just do the grand event, more of a black tie type of thing. But they have not announced yet who are the red wine, white wine, and sparkling wine sweepstakes winners. So they will announce that at the event. So you and 1,200 to 1,400 of your closest friends will be there when they announce all that.
Fun.
So it'll be amusing because there'll be, you know, the running of the bulls to those three wine stations when they announce those. Yeah. So it'll be a lot of fun. And then also the event, they also have a food event for the professional caterers and different restaurants in the area. They will be serving their food, their special items that they won awards for also. So what I enjoy doing, if I have the time before the public comes in, is I try to go out and find what will pair well with our wines, and then I'll bring them a bottle. And I say, hey, try this. And or pour them a glass of wine and say, you know, if you think that works with your food, you know where to send them.
Perfect. Any parting thoughts?
Yeah, well, I was wondering, I know that there's been a lot of people that have worked with you and Tom Mackey in the past. Is there anyone that's going to carry the torch, so to say, or carry on his legacy? Or is it sort of... No,
this is the end. We really don't have a lot of assets to be purchased. Unfortunately, we've been flying, as I tell people, we're so far under the radar, you need sonar to find us, because we've never been able to create a big buzz for our wines. Our wines are subtle. Tom and I, we're both old dogs. We aren't really good at marketing. We just try to make the best wine we can. And this is what we constantly run into when we get people reviewing our wines, is that they always say, especially with the Bordeaux, old school, old style. So it's a milder, smoother, mellower, ageable style of wine. And there's a place for that, but nobody's beating down our doors to buy it. So, but that's okay. I mean, we made the wine to make us happy about what we thought was good, and our wives like it too.
That's all that matters.
That's all that matters, and the dogs are happy.
Clyde, thank you so much for agreeing to come here today and open all these bottles. Let us taste it and talk to our audience about your experience that you're going through with the kind of the beginning and now at the end of the relationship with and in the company of Tom Mackey Cellars. I really appreciate that.
Sure.
And looking forward to taking some of this back to Alaska with me, that's for sure.
That'll work. Well, moose burgers with Malbec.
That sounds delicious to me. So cheers to you.
Thank you.
And
thank you, everyone.
We'll catch you next time on Just a Sip. Cheers, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.